there are a lot of goals going in the net in the Canadian Premier League this year, but more specifically, there are strikers scoring. Sam Salter's way up in front of the Golden Boot race with his 13. Coimbra's got 11. We've got Julian Altobelli, Brian Wright, Sean Hundal, Toby Warshevsky. It seems like the year of the striker. We'll start with you, Mitchell. This is not something we've really seen in the CPL historically. So just how exciting is it to see so many pure goal scorers in the league this year?
Well, it's not something that we've seen in the league historically, but these are, figures who have been part of the league's history, which makes it so much interesting. Obviously, there's the exception of Julian Altobelli, but these are a lot of guys like Wright, Coimbra, Salter, obviously, who have been around for a long time. Even, Sean Hundal hit him with the 4 like Sean Hundal this weekend. I don't know if that's still a thing, but
I don't know, man. I don't think so. But
Benedict, start making a song, please. I know he will. But these are character or figures who have been in the league for so long and have been, fairly prolific in the league, but are starting to really find ways to score. And they've been at multiple clubs, some of them, and are now finding homes where they are. And again, the CPL Golden Boot has never been won by a player who was in his first year in the league, obviously, other than Tristan Borges in the inaugural season for obvious reasons. So it takes time to learn how to score in this league. And now that we've had so many strikers who have been here for 3, 4, 5 seasons, I think you're starting to see the goals go in a big way. And, I think that's a significant factor in it and an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned, it's just so many of these guys that are kind of finding form and confidence. And there have been times, I feel like last year there were significant stretches where a lot of teams were having similar problems where striker just wasn't putting the ball in the net, or they'd create chances and there wasn't that killer instinct. We see a lot of that this year. AGR, I'll bring you in here. Is there one of these kind of these pure goal scorers in the league that's impressing you more than any this at this point in the season?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stories. I think you kind of have to start at the top just with Sam Salter and his growth and evolution, because for him to be, kind of in this race to break the single season goal record, he recently broke Ottawa's record. He's in the running for the all-time leading record. It's just so fascinating because you look at, the guys ahead of him in the all-time race, at least, like Alejandro Diaz has just been a pinnacle of consistency ever since he stepped in the league. You knew what you were getting there. You knew he was always going to be special. And Terran Campbell just kind of scored a lot of goals from day one and never really looked back and quietly, put up a lot of goals every year. Where Sam Salter kind of came into the league, had that hot season with Halifax where he scored a lot of penalties to kind of inflate it, but you're still like, okay, there's something interesting about him, but he was so raw, right? Like he was kind of this kid just shunted over on the right wing, didn't fully fit, was young, had a lot to prove. And then Ottawa paid the first transfer fee for him. And you're like, okay, interesting. Like, what do they see? And now just seeing the development where he's a pure number 9, just so good in his all-around game, the way he defends, the way he runs in behind, you see the work he's put in. And now he's just turned into an absolute machine up front. You can't help but like that evolution. Ditto to a Thiago Coimbra. What a evolution he's had, because we talk about raw. He's coming in this league. He was a yellow card magnet. He was driving Patrice Geyser up the wall where he'd score a beautiful goal and then take his shirt off and then get sent off 2 minutes later and, just drive him insane. Whereas now he's figured out a balance of, I can bully defenders and score goals and be annoying and be on the pitch, be available, be healthy too, because he's also battled some injury concerns given his size and other things the like. Just seeing his growth. And I think that's kind of also a story when you talk about these number 9s being here as long as they have. I've just loved seeing the evolution, because the Canadian Premier League, to be honest, has been the league of the defender. The first player to leave the league, right? Joel Waterman was a defender. Some of the best exports have been the Lucas McNaughtons. You see Dom Zator. A lot of these players have stole. We even had Dan Klump win the Player of the Year as a defender. Dan Nimick right now is killing as a defender. Like, it's such a defender-oriented league. But so it's really cool to see now all of a sudden, like every team in the league pretty much has a number 9 you can look at as that's the guy. And I think that's been the evolution this year, because the defenders dominated the first 6 years. Teams finally are starting to realize, like, the best way to beat a defender is you need a 9. You need a focal point. You need someone to use. And I think every team has kind of started to pick up on that. And it's made for this really cool, fascinating race.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what makes it so much fun. I mean, I don't think there's a lot that we want to say, in a positive sense around Pacific at the moment, but we've talked about it on this show. Like Diaz goes back into that number 9 spot, and he's exactly what they'd been missing in their attack. I mean, now they're missing other things, namely defenders, but that's neither here nor there. There's just so many of these players that I think for me are in that form. Like there's a confidence that's kind of building amongst them. Every team sees their strikers and the opposing strikers putting the ball in the net. So every individual striker is like, okay, I need to keep pace. This golden boot is still on the table. Salter was pulling away a little bit, but now Coimbra's just 2 back of him. Let's hone in a little bit quickly, though, on York before we move on. Hundal only starts this game, his first start for the club, by the way, because Julian Altobelli is hurt. He picks up a bit of hamstring tightness, I think a day before the game. So Mauro Eustachio plays it safe, leaves him out of the squad, gives Hundal his first start with the club after I think about 5 appearances off the bench since he arrived from Valor. And he does that. He scores 4 goals. Mitch, I guess the question here is, if you're Mauro Eustachio, what do you do next week against Halifax?
Can you find a way to start them both? I know that's probably not an idea. Well, I mean, it could. We've seen Julian Altobelli in preseason was on the wing, so we know he can play there, and we know he has. It's probably not ideal. I don't know. It's a really tricky one because it's almost impossible to take out a striker who's just scored 4 goals, and it shows how tricky it is with those kind of single positions in a team when you miss out on a game and all of a sudden the guy behind you who's been raring to go has such a performance like that. It's going to be a tough question. I think you stick with Hundal. Just again, he scored 4 goals. Like, you want to see what
hard to drop him.
You can stay hot, and Altobelli hasn't been quite as hot recently with the way he started the season. I still think, come the end of the year, if this is a playoff game, I still think you go with Julian Altobelli because he's been the more consistent of the two over his time in the CPL. But right now at this stage in the season, when you're battling for vital points and trying to get that home playoff game or move up higher, I think you got to go with the hot hand, and that's Sean Hundal.
Yeah, I think I agree, and it'd be really tough to go to Sean Hundal after this and be like, all right, buddy, you're back on the bench.
It's a simple answer, though. Like, come on. He just, I have to pull this out because I had it. But he scored a poker. We got the king here because, as Benny was calling him, he's the king of Brampton this weekend. Co-king of Brampton with some Tejan Buchanan fella who is leading La Liga in goals. But why not try a 3 or 4?
He only scored 3, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
4
so that
superior.
So AGR, that is my question. You've got kind of the strongest, understanding of what these kind of tactics work and don't. Is there room for 2 striker setup in the modern CPL?
I think it's worth a try because I think York's at a stage where like your playoff spot isn't really at threat. Yes, you're in that battle for 3rd, but like Mitch mentioned, Altobelli was scoreless in 3, which feels like a first for the season. He has 1 in his last 5, I think it is. He's kind of hit a bit of a wall, and sometimes as a striker you need to either competition. Hundal coming in brings that. Why not see? Because I think what's interesting with both is they're actually 2 different strikers, right? Like Hundal is a guy who likes to link up, drop deep, get the ball in his feet, whereas Altobelli's just been such a relentless runner in behind. I think there's a world where you try Altobelli up front and Hundal and maybe like an Adonijah Reed, maybe he's probably their best in terms of staying in the middle and being a 10 and being a link up reference and get a bit of a different look. Because I think for York, you may as well try it because there's going to be points where, depending on your playoff matchup, who knows where you'll be at. Say you're down 1-0 at halftime in a playoff game where you're looking at a Hundal on the bench, or heck, maybe from the start, you're thinking, okay, we need 2 strikers to give defenders something to worry about. So I think it would be good to try it. And if Hundal's in form and you're trying to pick Altobelli back up, it is nice that stylistically you're not asking 2 9s to plug in and play together. And I think there's some room within Eustachio's system for some sort of flexibility like that.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's worth at least giving a shot. And as you kind of alluded to, Julian Altobelli has played a lot of football this year. He's probably tired at this point in the season. I'm sure that as much as you want to be playing as much as you can as a striker, I don't think he'll be too upset that there's someone who can share a bit of that load with him as we head into the last month of the season.